Everything about it was perfect. The looks, the sound, the price tag that made millionaires flinch. That should have been the warning sign. The Bugatti Veyron. Even saying the name out loud feels like you're showing off. And when it debuted in 2005, it didn't just raise the bar for supercars. It picked the bar up, threw it into orbit, and dared the entire automotive world to go get it. But here's the thing nobody talks about in the highlight reels. The Veyron almost didn't exist. Not because of money, not because of ambition, because the laws of physics kept getting in the way. If you caught the short version on our Shorts channel, you got a taste of what this car actually took to build. But today, we're going deep. We're talking about the engineering problems that should have killed this project, the solutions that were genuinely insane, and the moment partway through development when the people building it realized something terrifying. Let's get into it. So let's set the scene. It's the late 1990s. Volkswagen Group has just bought Bugatti. Ferdinand Piëch, the man who also gave us the Audi Quattro and the Golf GTI, basically stands up in a room full of engineers and says, "We're building a car with 1,001 horsepower. Top speed, 400 kilometers per hour. 0 to 100 under 3 seconds." The room goes quiet, because those numbers don't just push engineering limits, they shatter them. At the time, the fastest production cars in the world were touching maybe 550-600 horsepower on a good day. Piëch wasn't asking his team to go a little further. He was asking them to nearly double what the industry thought was possible for a road-legal vehicle. Nobody saw what was coming next. The first problem? The engine. You can't just bolt 8 cylinders together and call it a day. To hit that power number with any reliability, Bugatti engineers essentially took 2 VR8 engines. That's the tight-angle V configuration that Volkswagen was already developing, and grafted them together at the crankshaft to create a W16. 16 cylinders. For turbochargers. An engine that, laid flat, is barely longer than a conventional V8 but produces more than 3 times the power. And here's the part that should make your brain short-circuit. That engine produces so much heat that at full throttle, it consumes air at a rate equivalent to a human breathing in and out 47,000 times per minute. The cooling system isn't just complex. It's a science project. 10 separate radiators. 10. Most cars have 1. The Veyron has 10, and they still had to choreograph exactly how coolant flowed between them to keep the whole thing from turning into a very expensive campfire. This is what we mean when we say the Veyron wasn't built, it was invented. Okay, so you've got your insane engine. You've got your cooling sorted. Now you've just got to put the power down. Easy, right? Wrong. At 400 kilometers per hour, the centrifugal force acting on a tire is almost impossible to comprehend. Standard tires, even high-performance ones, would literally tear themselves apart at that speed. The rubber would separate from the rim. You'd go from fastest car in the world to most spectacular crash in the world in about half a second. Michelin had to develop an entirely new tire for the Veyron. The PAX system, special run-flat construction. Speed rated to 431 kilometers per hour. And here's the enthusiast tax nobody mentions when they're drooling over these cars. A full set of those tires costs around $42,000 Canadian. That's not a typo. $42,000 for tires. And they last maybe 15,000 kilometers in normal driving. Push the car hard and that number drops significantly. But wait, it gets worse. Because those tires are mounted on wheels bonded to a special rim, you can't just go to your local shop to swap them. They have to be sent back to a facility in France. The process takes weeks. So if you're the kind of person who bought a Veyron thinking you'd use it as an actual sports car on weekends, good luck with your plans. That is when the story changes. Here's a number that sounds simple until you think about it. At 400 kilometers per hour, air resistance increases exponentially. Drag is proportional to the square of velocity, meaning if you double your speed, drag quadruples. The aerodynamic forces on the Veyron at full tilt are so severe that without active downforce management, the car would become essentially uncontrollable. So Bugatti built a wing system that's more sophisticated than anything on most race cars. 7 distinct aerodynamic modes, all controlled automatically based on speed and driver input. At low speeds, the rear wing deploys for downforce. At high speeds, it tucks away to reduce drag. Hit the brakes from 400 kilometers per hour. The wing snaps to a 55-degree angle and acts as an air brake, generating over 0.8 g of deceleration before the actual brakes even fully bite. Speaking of brakes, carbon ceramic rotors the size of dinner plates, with calipers running 8 pistons per corner. At top speed, The stopping distance from 400 to 0 is about 10 seconds. Which sounds long, until you realize the car travels almost half a kilometer in that time and the braking force involved is genuinely violent. This is the thing about the Veyron that gets lost in all the horsepower conversation. It wasn't just about going fast. It was about building a complete system, where every component had to be reinvented to survive working alongside every other component at the same extreme. It's the automotive equivalent of building a space shuttle and making it comfortable enough to drive to the grocery store. Which, by the way, some owners actually did. And that brings us to the part that should make any gearhead's stomach turn a little. The Veyron stickered at around $1.7 million USD when it launched. And Volkswagen Group, by most analysts' estimates, lost somewhere between $5 and $6 million on every single one they built. They made 450 Veyrons. You do that math. That is a level of financial commitment to automotive ego that is breathtaking. But if you think the buying price is wild, the ownership cost is where this car becomes genuinely unhinged. We already covered the tires. But then there's the service schedule. Every year, regardless of mileage, the Veyron requires a major service that runs roughly $30,000 to $40,000 Canadian. The gear oil in the 7-speed dual-clutch transmission drained and replaced every service. The hydraulic system for the active suspension and wing inspected and recalibrated. The 10 cooling circuits flushed. That is when mechanics realized something terrifying. This car is not a car. It's a museum piece that happens to have an engine. This connects to something we've been seeing in the broader market, actually. A clean 1996 Toyota 4Runner just sold at Mecum auction for $52,800, which sounds insane for a 30-year-old truck. But that truck will cost you almost nothing to maintain and parts are everywhere. The Veyron and the 4Runner represent two completely opposite philosophies about what a vehicle is supposed to be. One is an engineering monument. The other is a tool that just refuses to die. Both have passionate followings. Only one will bankrupt you. At ThrottleCode, we always say, the best car is the one you can actually afford to own. The Veyron is the ultimate counterexample to that philosophy, and somehow, it makes us love it even more for it. Now, if you're the type who actually works on your own vehicles, even just basic diagnostics, honestly, having a solid OBD2 scanner matters more than most people think. The Incel AD310 Classic OBD2 scanner goes for about $40 Canadian on Amazon, and it's the kind of tool that earns its keep the first time your check engine light comes on. Not relevant to a Veyron, obviously, those go to Molscium. But for the rest of us keeping our daily drivers alive, links in the description. Here's the argument I want to make, and I think it's an important one. The Bugatti Veyron is probably the most important car of the 21st century so far. Not because it's the fastest, not because it's the most beautiful, though it's certainly up there, but because of what it forced the entire industry to reconsider. Before the Veyron, the automotive world largely believed there was an invisible ceiling on what a road car could do. 600 horsepower felt like the edge of reason. The McLaren F1 had done 240 miles per hour in the 90s, and that felt like it would stand forever. The Veyron didn't just break those expectations, it made them look quaint. And once Bugatti proved it was possible, every other manufacturer had to respond. The Koenigsegg CCXR, the Hennessy Venom GT, eventually the Chiron, the Rimac Nevera, all of them exist partly because the Veyron redrew the map of what was achievable. And then there's the internet car culture angle, because the Veyron became massive online before car content was even really a thing. Top Gear's Stig lapping it, the race against a jet, the infamous Supersport controversy. The Veyron basically taught a generation of car enthusiasts what engineering ambition looked like, and it did it through screens. There's an interesting parallel here to what we're seeing in today's EV space. Tesla's ongoing FSD lawsuits in China, 10 owners seeking over $500,000 in damages over promises the software couldn't keep, remind us that automotive ambition without delivery has consequences. Bugatti promised the impossible, then they actually delivered it. That distinction matters enormously. The Bugatti Veyron is one of those cars that rewards obsession. The more you learn about how it was built, the more respect you have for the team of engineers who essentially refused to accept the limits that physics was throwing at them. It's a financial disaster to own. It required inventing technology that didn't exist. It made Volkswagen Group billions of dollars in losses. And it is, without question, one of the greatest engineering achievements in automotive history. Love it or think it's absurd, which, by the way, it absolutely is, the Veyron earned every bit of its legend. If you want to go deeper, smash that subscribe button because in part 2 we're covering the Veyron's successor, the Chiron, and whether Bugatti actually managed to outdo themselves, or whether chasing more numbers was the beginning of diminishing returns. Drop a comment below. Do you think the Veyron is overrated? Or is it the most underrated engineering story in modern automotive history? I genuinely want to know where you land on this. Links to everything mentioned are down in the description. Thanks for watching ThrottleCode. Follow ThrottleCode for more car content.